What's happening, YouTube? It's your boy BountyTank checking in. We are on Tank Talk. We have a important discussion today. Ohio public safety is in jeopardy, and we're going to tell you why we want you to go vote for issue 1. We have 2 special guests today. We have Tony Sylvester, owner of Sly Bail Bonds, in the building. How we doing? We also have Kent police officer Lamar Sharpe, also community activist, man.
What's happening?
Appreciate you guys coming and having this conversation, which is very important. So let's get down to it. What is issue 1 and how is it going to affect us? We're going to start off with Tony.
Well, from my understanding, it's a pretty basic constitutional amendment. And what it essentially does is return the discretion on bail and detention-related decisions, as well as how bail is set and if there's a schedule, how it's structured, back to the municipalities and the trial court judges, which is up until about, let's say, 9 months ago is the way that it has always been, but that has recently changed through some rather unorthodox means.
I know you were saying that the law was actually changed without anyone's knowledge knowing.
Well, the law didn't change. What changed is that the justices bureaucratically rewrote the criminal rules of trial procedure. So what they did is, through judicial fiat, they didn't change the law. They changed the structure of the language of how courts administer the law. And they changed the wording and the terminology pretty drastically in some places, which left it incredibly vague.
Is that legal?
Well, it is legal. There has been questions as to whether the interpretation of that vagary is constitutional, which is what led us to issue 1, which is essentially a clarification.
Wow. That's wild. So exactly as far as this issue 1, people don't really understand. It takes the ability of the judges to use public safety as a factor when considering bail, which is, in my opinion, completely insane.
It almost, when the Ohio Constitution was written and when these criminal rules of procedure were put into place, and they've been modified, it's not the act of tweaking or modifying the structure of the rules is not unique. It's something that I think happens fairly periodically. But public safety, the Constitution and the rules of criminal procedure and the rules that govern law enforcement were written with public safety as the paramount concern, to the point where there were things that were just conventional wisdom. They were common sense, and they were assumed at the time, and they were not expressly spelled out that obviously public safety would be a paramount concern. So, and now you've had a Supreme Court majority in a 4-3 decision on a Cincinnati case that essentially they rewrote the rules and then proceeded to immediately interpret the vagueness in those rules to mean that since it doesn't explicitly say public safety is a consideration, that you can't consider public safety.
So Lamar, I know you do a lot of community policing. This is something that will hit, really the urban community really hard, since it's already a high crime area. Then you have a situation where criminals they no longer fear punishment because they have the opportunity just to get right back out. I mean, does that make you worry at all about your job?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, what holds a lot of people back from committing crimes is the thought of, I'm not trying to do 25 to life. You mean to tell me, I might go out here and do this, and I might go home afterwards, and they might put me on house arrest to my court, or ends up my trial starts for a couple of years. I was just watching something last night that happened. Something happened in 2017 and 2022. They're finally going to court for it earlier this year. Oh, wow. I mean, it's like I don't have any fear. So now you have people who are not involved in criminal activity who want to just live their life. They can't enjoy their neighborhoods because they don't know what's going to happen. People are going to become prisoners of their own home.
Right. And this just doesn't affect us obviously, because we work in that environment, this is going to affect the normal working human, more than somebody in the upper class maybe, but it will eventually sprinkle down to the better, to the better areas. So, I mean,
and you have to think about it too. I wrote a book and I talk about, my daughter. My daughter was shot 5 times going to a vigil for a friend. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is like stuff like that that can be common. It'll be a common thing where something like that can happen every day, a couple times a day. You know what I mean? So if people aren't aware or feel like they have any consequences hanging over their head, that's gonna be normal behavior, normal everyday behavior.
Do you think it's kind of ironic also, Tony, that this is present and also we just passed the law where it's open carry as well?
I think it's a very interesting kind of weird dichotomy that on one hand, they've now said constitutional carry, that you can carry without restriction. You don't need any kind of permit. But on the other hand, they've just given you apparently a great incentive to do so. Because essentially, if you work in retail under this theory, you probably should need to be packing. Because what I've seen anecdotally is that retail businesses are the first domino. Because basically theft under $1,000 is now legal.
So wait, hey, if you're a criminal, you're thinking, I can make an actually career out of this.
I'm about to come up.
I mean, there's no repercussions. I mean, I don't think, and me and Tony had a conversation about this the other day. I thought it was common sense, but apparently, it's not common anymore.
Not at all. Not at all. And doing this for 22 and a half years, I look at things and I'm like, this can't be life. This can't be, like, sometimes I ask guys, I'm like, or people that I've interacted, I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, I mean, what were you really thinking? And what do you think was going to happen to you? And they're just like, I can do time sitting on my head. Right? And plus, they ain't going to do nothing. Our mindset of our youth, they're not going to do anything. Because right now in Stark County, our youth, they're not facing any consequences unless they do the big crime, the one the felony 1 murder. That's where they're sitting down.
And that could be just a buildup of continually committing crimes, and there's no punishment until you go for the big one.
Big one. But I can go ahead and do a little small rash of a whole bunch of the little ones, and I'm going to be okay because they're not going to do anything to me.
Right, it's just a complete buildup. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you know what was going on in New York and also what's about to go on in Chicago. Kind of similar, but a little bit different. I mean, me and Tony had a conversation about it. I'm gonna let him tell the story. It was a situation, and you might go into depth on it a little bit more. A person, I think it was a foreigner, driving a vehicle, and they committed vehicular homicide. And normally, of course, you get arrested, you go to jail. But this person just got a summons, and it was right back on the street. So, I mean, this is the type of situation that can happen if we don't pass these, vote for this issue 1. I mean, it's quite insane. But Tony, what do you think will be the splitting hair that causes people to realize this is a danger to the public
when they become the victim?
Yeah,
I mean, that's always the defining moment. Is they say a conservative is just a liberal that got mugged. Because in theory, and I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, I believe that a lot of these are well-intentioned and people are doing the wrong thing for the right reasons because in theory, it seems like it would work, but it's the unintended consequences that are really killing everybody. Nobody wants to warehouse people in jail. And, as Officer Sharpe here, he just encapsulated the whole thing in a simple 2-minute conversation, which is that threat of punishment is what keeps the people in line that would contemplate crime but are not overly motivated to commit it. It's kind of like the old saying, locks just keep honest people from stealing. But when you remove the disincentive, when you remove the deterrence, and you put punishment out, in the case he describes, 5 years, criminals, generally speaking, if you throw your Lex Luthor, Elon Musk, one in a lifetime, or some white-collar criminal out, they have low impulse control. It's about immediate gratification. The deterrence is what they weigh that against. When you remove that disincentive and they want what they want and they want it now, it's only natural. It's human nature. And this is, many people much more educated and intelligent than me have proven this time and again. They're going to reach out and take it, which is why, what he's describing in his everyday, that's on a macro level. That's true in large part for a segment of human nature. It's a tale as old as time.
So just so the people know, what exactly are the judges using as far as how they grant a person bail?
It's my understanding that right now they are only able to consider the person's appearance history and the seriousness of the offense in front of them. So they are not allowed to consider any public safety or any other factors around that. They can only consider what, and I guess you'd call it ex parte information that normally they would be able to consider in a context. Right now, they're limited to what's in front of them, which is, what did they do, and are they likely to come back?
So that guy that committed that domestic violence, and the woman is scared out of her life that he's going to come back and kill her, and he said it, and they have proof he said it. He can now just move freely. If he's proved to always go to court, he has a good record.
Essentially, in domestic, it's a little bit different because there's a very narrow band in the law as it's provided right now that in a case like domestic violence or a murder, and I believe maybe treason, and there's one or two other crimes, you could fall under, I think it's the Rule 8 exception, which means they could essentially hold a mini trial at the arraignment and call witnesses and present evidence to deny bail and just detain the person preventatively. But it is a lengthy and expensive and time-consuming process, and it was never meant to be used as the default. Just in Canton Municipal Court, which is a busy municipal court for the size of our community, but it pales in comparison to, say, Columbus or Cleveland. I would say, and Officer Sharpe could anecdotally, I would say in Stark County in general, but in the city of Canton, you may have anywhere between 6 and 10 domestics on a weekend. So could you imagine going into the municipal arraignment and running 10 mini trials in the morning? Wow. And if he is the complaining officer, he has to testify at those hearings. And, you have a right to confront your accuser. So victims, neighbors that may want to otherwise remain anonymous, these people are going to get pulled in here. It's the law of unintended consequences. So you would essentially need a judge that did nothing but run these detainment hearings 24/7.
Gotcha. So, Lamar, are you hearing this as a possibility that if this issue doesn't pass, how does that impact your job, knowing that, hey, you're arresting these people over and over again consistently, and they're just getting right back out to the point they don't take you serious, they're just laughing at you? I mean, how does that impact you and other officers, guys completing your job?
This job is already rough, just without even out that. But I can even imagine we're already struggling to get people who want to be police officers. Something like this passing will definitely create a much bigger shortage of police officers coming into this career, because for what? Like, you go out there and it doesn't even matter, like me being a community guy, going out here talking to people. If people know that they're not going to be held accountable for their actions, they don't care that they hung out with me or I got a relationship with, to an extent. But when it comes to that other officer, they don't know. And then also, too, think about it like this. Every day you're going out there, you're putting your life on the line. Like, I really, for 22 years, I put on that uniform. I always said a prayer before I went out on the street. And not just for me, but for everybody I come across. I want everybody to be safe. I've never had to shoot anybody, and I pray that I never, ever have to shoot anybody on this job. But when you think about things like this, what's the element of stopping somebody else from taking my life?
Right.
Because there's no consequences. And here, anybody that knows me, and I can walk out here and stand on the middle of the street, and I'll get 20 people to blow at me because they know me. They know I have no ill intention, but there's just some people that with this passing, they won't care. It won't matter at all.
So you definitely see a spike in crime, most definitely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you feel like, Tony, that people who are making these changes to the language are just detached from obviously the streets, because they're not in them? They don't really realize how this is truly going to impact the community and trickle down. I mean, look at what you're saying right now. This would make cops not even want to be police officers no more. It causes a further shortage, which we definitely don't need right now.
Right.
It's my belief that if the people of Ohio wanted to implement changes of this magnitude, that the proper channel would have been through the Ohio Assembly. And in point of fact, some powerful interest groups did introduce bills over the last few years. They did try to get these changes made through the legislative process. They failed, in some cases quite miserably, because, quite frankly, when it sounds good and it gets to the committee and you start to look at this and examine it, a lot of it fell apart pretty quickly. But what you had was a couple, and these are not my words, these are actually Justice Fisher's words, activist judges in that group of 7 that took it upon themselves that they were going to, through judicial fiat, implement these changes to the extent that they could around the will of the legislative body. And that's what they've done. So, again, I think these people are disconnected from the street, obviously. I'm of the belief that, again, they believed that what they were doing was of such importance and that it would create more good than harm, that they just imposed it roughshod and figured we'll work out the kinks later. And that's never a good way to implement policy.
Do you feel what's happened in New York has showed the importance of really having bail and bail bondsmen?
I believe that what you get in New York is you get to see what's essentially a microcosm of the rest of the country, because I would say that the 5 boroughs has a population probably roughly analogous to the entire state of Ohio. I believe there's around 11 million people in the state of Ohio. I believe if you take the New York metro area, there's at least 10 million. So what you're seeing what these policy changes do in some place with a large population density. So it kind of speeds up the process. Obviously, with a lower population density, it would take longer for that ripple effect to occur and to see these changes. It takes longer to seep out. But when you have a tremendous amount of people in a relatively short span, it kind of speeds up the process. And that's what you've seen all crime spike. But what you've seen even quicker was you saw retail theft, grand theft auto. These crimes, I think it was illegal possession of a firearm was originally on there before the skinny repeal if there was no underlying crime. What you saw the criminals, literally, because they posted a list of the things that were no longer bail eligible for detainment. And those crimes went through the roof. There's a notorious story about one guy committing something like 110 subway-related crimes, petty theft, turnstile jumping, disorderly conduct, 110 times. And there was no provision to detain somebody based on recidivism. So he walked over and over and over and over, sometimes multiple times a day, before I think it was a Nassau County judge said, I don't care what the law says, I'm holding you on bail. Your attorney can appeal it, but this has to end. So the judge basically said, the law doesn't allow me to do this, but I'm doing it anyway, stop me. And you have started to see some municipal judges in Ohio that have essentially said the same thing. There's one who I will not name in this county that I heard say on the record, I understand that the law now provides that I can't do this, but I'm doing it.
Oh, wow. Somebody needs to be able to govern these judges. Wow. So, I mean, back to the community aspect of it. I think, guys, you need to really sit back and put this in perspective. Just kind of like imagine you have a neighbor that's continuously breaking into your home every single day. He's breaking in your home, stealing your belongings, and now you have no one to call because the police are tired of doing their job and arresting this guy is getting back out. So now you're just stuck in a position where this guy keeps coming in your home. You can't call the cops. They don't have enough on staff because of what's going on, and people just don't want to become officers. So just think about future how this could play out. I mean, this could be really tragic. And then you get people taking, obviously people are going to protect themselves. They're going to start taking matters into their own hands and possibly get charged for trying to just defend themselves and their business. So, I mean, this could really go bad. I think you were telling me about a story, a guy, somebody came in and he stabbed a guy because he tried to rob him.
That was another case out of New York in the boroughs where there was, again, and it was strong arm robbery. Young man comes in, starts trying to get at the register, starts punching the guy running the bodega who was an older gentleman. And, to get to the register, he's stealing. I think he may have grabbed a pack of cigarettes, but what he really wanted was the register. And the guy had a knife under the counter and he stabbed him and he killed him. And again, you've got people that have never been in any kind of criminal justice related field going, well, he was just punching him. That's not a reasonable use of force to pull a knife. But when you're getting beaten by a guy twice your age, or half your age and twice your size, you have no assurances he's going to stop. I mean, blunt force trauma, I've seen people in a bar fight killed with one punch. So, yes, it's not the same percentage chance of fatal injury or death as a bullet, but it's the risk is still there. And to ask people to take a mulligan on getting beaten, it just doesn't seem like good public policy. Now, the epilogue to that story is after a big public outcry, and I think that gentleman sat in jail for maybe 7 to 10 days. The DA did drop the charges eventually. And so, but again, and they've repealed part of the New York bail law, so I don't know if strong arm robbery is it might be a bail eligible offense at this point. Again, in New York, it wasn't at one point, but I think it may be. But irregardless, this gentleman felt empowered enough in broad daylight in front of everybody to go in and just start hammering on this guy to get to the register. So, and that's not an isolated incident. Thank God it's not widespread, but it would become much more commonplace because, again, if you're going to steal less than $1,000, you're bulletproof. And so retail sales will become the world's most dangerous job.
Right.
That's wild. So, question, Lamar, just obviously you're a police officer. How many officers you think are even aware of what's going on or what we're talking about right now? And if they did know, how do you think they will respond to this?
You know what? I'm so busy and I'm constantly moving, coaching football. I didn't even know about it until me and you spoke about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, what? So I'm, kind of looking into it a little bit, and I don't think many know.
So I think it's super important that we get this out there, because especially within the officers, this is going to affect them also.
Yeah, but real quick though, but think about this. What about the mindset? You got to think outside of the box. What about the mindset of people when this passes? The people who are not into that life, they say, you know what, I'm going to get a gun. If I see somebody knocking at my door that doesn't belong there, I'm just going to deal with them. It's like this is one of those things that has a domino effect.
It's definitely going to frighten a certain class of people. It is. I mean, it's scary. It is.
Oh, yeah.
And to the point where someone does knock on your door, you do reach for a gun. It's going to create some sort of chaos in the community and spread throughout the city.
And if it does pass from here on out, I will never go into another store. I'll be an online shopper for the rest of my life.
Online sales will go up.
Yes.
Well, and just so we're clear, it's already here. What we're trying to do is urge people to vote yes on issue 1. We want this constitutional amendment to pass, because what it essentially does is undo the changes that have been made. So unfortunately, we're already living in the world where this is happening. It's just, again, it has not escalated that far yet because the appellate case, I think, was only ruled on in June or July. So as far as the public safety piece, we're only about 3 or 4 months into this, which is why the Attorney General and some people in Columbus, all hands on deck, drafted this amendment and got it on the ballot quick, fast, and right now to try to nip this in the bud before we get into Mad Max territory.
Yeah, I've personally seen. I know you have also. We'll get calls on bonds that are violent and high level felonies, and they just get released. I have personally been witnessing that and experiencing it. So I mean, it's super crazy to hear someone a certain crime they commit and then they're back on the streets the next day. I mean, I get tons of defendants or victims that call me because they're scared to death because this guy just got released and no one could do anything. So we really need to vote for this guy. So I think voting is coming up in November, correct?
Yes.
So, guys, we really need to get out there. No one cares until it affects you. Mm-hmm. But I guarantee you it will some way or form affect you at some point, no matter who you are.
If you're not registered to vote, you need to get registered.
Oh, you definitely do.
Yeah.
Definitely do. So, I mean, I still can't believe it. It's just crazy that they changed this without no one knowing. So it's super important that we literally educate everybody on this.
We have to, because these are two issues, and they're both going to be on the ballot, and they seem unrelated, but they're not. Which is, you've got issue one, which essentially undoes the activism on the bench that kind of slid this in under the radar with no one realizing it had been done. But you also have a Supreme Court Chief Justice who retired. So now you have a very important Supreme Court election coming up. There, I think, are 3 seats up and for grabs, and one of them is the Chief Justice seat. So what you had 3 justices that voted against this and 4 that voted with. So, but for that very tortured reading of the law, issue 1 wouldn't be necessary. So you've got DeWine, Fisher, and Kennedy. And I urge people to vote for those 3, particularly Kennedy for the Chief Justice. And I think Justice DeWine wrote the dissent on the case that really kicked this all off. And, if we had a more, and a conservative isn't the word, just literal interpretation of the law, justices, issue 1 would have never been necessary. I mean, that amendment is 2 lines, and it's common. It literally restates the criteria that were in the Ohio Revised Code up until 9 months ago. There were always 4 barrel factors. It was the dangerousness, the appearance, community ties, and criminal history. It literally is a reprint to restore where we were before they rewrote those rules. It's the same system that we had been running criminal trials under for as long as I've been alive, and probably longer. So, I mean, the 2 issues are related. And, we could pass this amendment, and thank God, things go back to normal. But if you have people that have a radical agenda, whether in the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Many people have done the wrong thing for the right reasons. And that's why the legislative body is where these things are meant to be contemplated, because every community gets a voice, and you would hopefully have a wide range of perspectives and ideas that hammer out the best solution for everyone, as opposed to, in this case, 4 people kind of deciding for the entire state.
So just so people hear that again, I just want you to repeat the 3 justices.
The 3 justices that voted against this and that have been very vocal in opposition to it and wrote a pretty scathing dissent were Justices Kennedy, Fisher, and DeWine. And they're, I believe, all 3 up for re-election. And I believe Kennedy, in particular, is running for Maureen O'Connor's vacant seat, because while she is a justice, and I don't believe she's running for her basic seat, she has stepped up to run for the Chief Justice seat. So all 3 of them are on the ballot. And again, one of the 4 justices that voted, that brought this about, is retired. So, and that seat, I believe will be filled by appointment from the governor. But that's going to be a seat on the court, not the Chief Justice seat. That will be filled. That's at issue in this election. So, DeWine, Kennedy, Fisher. If we would have had 7 of them, or hell, even 4, issue 1 would not have. We wouldn't even be talking about this. I mean, because again, it would have been assumed that this was the natural state of affairs because it was explicitly stated in the criminal rules up till they were rewritten in such a way that they could be reinterpreted, and then they were affirmatively and deliberately interpreted away from what they had been, for how many ever decades prior.
Gotcha. So, all my Ohioans, all you guys, it is really important that we get out and vote. All right. I need everybody. I know we got a lot of police officers. We got a lot of mixture of people to follow us. So please, guys, if you're in Ohio, make sure you get out and vote. It is super important, man. Don't let this become an issue when we can nip it in the bud right now. So it's super important. You guys spread this information around. If someone doesn't know, educate them. Let them know. Send them here. Make sure you guys get out and vote. I appreciate Tony, Lamar coming on. I will put these guys' information in the description. We're going to get Tony to start his own podcast, man. He doesn't know. I'm going to make him. He's a very very guy. He has a lot of wisdom, man. I'm going to get him more active talking, man.
Some of it is even true.
a lot of laughters too, man. So what do you have going on right now, Lamar? You are very big in the community. Just curious, you working on anything new right now?
No, just we doing our mentoring. We mentor boys and girls from the age of 8 to 17. Just trying to keep them out the system.
Gotcha.
I know you came in and talked to them. I got to have you back one day because I know a lot of kids, a lot of our youth follow you. I got some of my football players be like, BountyTank. I'm like, yeah, of course I do. That's my dude. But not, just trying to keep these kids out. We got holidays coming up. I always try to reward kids and try to help families out. We sponsor families. Just trying to get back because, growing up poor, I know the struggle.
Right.
That's one of those things that probably, too, help people from crossing over that line, just knowing that people are out there that want to help them.
Right.
So, people won't go into that other side, and you just keep like, hey, listen, I got you. What you need, I got your back.
That's right. I'm happy to hear that. A lot of people in a position of power don't think like that. Obviously, your job and what me and Tony do, we're able to touch people either in a negative or a positive way. Right. So I'm glad that you're doing it in a much positive way and possibly change some of the youth's mindset. This is why it's so important to vote for this because a lot of the youth mindset is not where it needs to be. No. It's a very dangerous temperature right now, especially with the young people, man. So it's important that we protect our loved ones and ourselves and get out there and vote. Right. I don't want nobody breaking into my house.
Right.
And getting right back out. I don't know about you, Tone.
You'll come on your feet, but you're leaving on your back.
So, appreciate you guys, man. Make sure you come back, like, subscribe. Catch you guys later. Get out there and vote. If I find out you didn't vote, we all coming, and we're going to hunt you down. Catch you later.